Welcome, Mystic Seekers, to Mystic Manor, where history meets mystery. Merlin, the legendary wizard and wise mentor, but maybe not as noble as you'd think. Yes, he's the ultimate advisor to King Arthur, but what if there's a much darker side to the story? From dark magic to ethically questionable decisions, today we're pulling back the curtain on the side of Merlin you've never seen, the part that's a bit twisted. So, let's dive in and see why Merlin might not exactly be the hero that you always thought he was. Before we dive into Merlin's darker side, let's first get a quick sense of who Merlin is and where he comes from. The Arthurian legend is a collection of medieval stories and folklore centered around the mythical British leader, King Arthur. These tales often include themes of chivalry, magic, and heroism, as well as key figures like Queen Guinevere, the Knights of the Round Table, and the quest for the Holy Grail. While it's unclear if Arthur was based on a real person, the stories were popularized in the 12th century by Geoffrey of Monmouth's History of the Kings of Britain, which portrays Arthur as a great British king who defended his realm against Saxon invaders. Merlin, the legendary wizard, is a central figure in Arthurian lore. His origins trace back to early Welsh legends, where he was known as Merlin, a prophetic figure with supernatural abilities. Geoffrey of Monmouth expanded on this character, combining Merlin with other folklore to create Merlin as a wise and powerful sorcerer who serves as Arthur's advisor, guiding his rise to kingship. Merlin is far more complex than many modern portrayals suggest. From his use of dark magic to his manipulation of fate, Merlin's actions come dangerously close to unsettling territory. One of Merlin's earliest known stories that reveals his dark side involves Merlin and the dragons of Vortigern's tower. In this tale, Merlin's actions, though clever, expose his capacity for cruelty, manipulation, and even violence when he feels threatened or wishes to assert his power. The story begins with King Vortigern, a British ruler known for his tyrannical ways, who is struggling to consolidate his power as his kingdom faces attacks from invading Saxons. Vortigern seeks to build a fortress to secure his rule, but every time the construction begins, the ground inexplicably collapses, swallowing the stones and materials overnight. His advisors, desperate to find a solution, turn to the superstitions of the time and tell him he must perform a sacrifice to appease the spirits of the land. Following their advice, Vortigern orders his soldiers to find a child, born without a father to use as a sacrifice. Young Merlin, rumored to have been born of a mortal woman and an incubus, fits the description, and he is captured to be sacrificed. However, Merlin, instead of submitting to his fate, he demands an audience with Vortigern and reveals his hidden powers in a show of wisdom and intimidation that leaves Vortigern awestruck. Merlin explains that the reason the ground is unstable is because two dragons, one red, one white, are locked in a deadly struggle beneath the earth. He describes how the red dragon, symbolizing the Britons, and the white dragon, representing the Saxons, are fighting for control. Merlin's prophecy hints that the Britons will eventually overcome the Saxons, and he tells Vortigern that he can prove it by releasing the dragons from their underground prison. Here's where Merlin's darker side begins to emerge. To demonstrate his power and knowledge, he performs a ritual that releases the dragons, knowing full well the destruction it will unleash. As the dragons break free, they clash violently, their fiery breath and fierce battle devastating the surrounding land and terrorizing Vortigern's people. Merlin stands back, allowing the chaos to unfold, indifferent to the suffering of the innocent villagers and soldiers caught in the crossfire. His focus is not on protecting others, but on displaying his own mystical superiority and proving his prophecy to Vortigern. Merlin's release of the dragons allows him to avoid being sacrificed by impressing Vortigern with his foresight and power. But deeper down, it reveals a darker aspect that appears throughout his life: his willingness to unleash destruction to demonstrate his wisdom and establish his authority. After the dragon's battle, Merlin coldly advises Vortigern that his rule will soon come to an end and foretells the rise of a new ruler, Uther Pendragon, Arthur's future father. Rather than helping Vortigern or using his powers to protect his people, Merlin's priority is to assert his own influence and ensure that his prophecies and his vision for Britain's future come to pass, with a callous disregard for the collateral damage he causes, a recurring theme. Perhaps Merlin's most morally dubious intervention involves Uther Pendragon's pursuit of Lady Igraine, Arthur's future mother. Uther falls in love with Igraine, who is already married to the Duke of Cornwall, Gorlois. Desperate and obsessed, Uther turns to Merlin for help. Using a powerful illusion, Merlin transforms Uther to look like Gorlois, enabling him to enter Igraine's chambers and spend the night with her. This deception results in Arthur's conception. On the same night that Uther deceives Igraine, Gorlois is killed in battle. Igraine, still unaware of the deception, believes she has been with her true husband. After Gorlois' death, Uther reveals the truth of what happened. Soon afterward, Uther marries Igraine, and she becomes Queen of Britain. When Uther Pendragon seeks Merlin's help, Merlin advises that Arthur be raised in secret, away from his parents and noble lineage, to protect him from those who would seek to end his life. Uther, eager to be with Igraine and secure an heir, agrees to this arrangement. After Uther and Igraine's marriage, Arthur is born. In keeping with the pact, Merlin takes Arthur shortly after birth. Merlin places Arthur with Sir Ector, a loyal and trustworthy knight, to be raised in obscurity and safety, far from the royal court. Arthur grows up unaware of his royal heritage, thinking of Sir Ector as his father, until he pulls the sword from the stone and learns of his true identity. While Merlin's actions fulfilled his own prophecy regarding Arthur's birth, they involved deception and the disregard of Igraine's autonomy. His willingness to manipulate others for the sake of destiny demonstrates a morally complex side, blurring the line between prophecy and coercion. Once Arthur is born, Merlin goes to great lengths to ensure he will survive and eventually take the throne. This decision, however, separated Arthur from his family and threw him into a life of mystery and hardship. To some, Merlin's choice reflects wisdom, as he prioritized Arthur's safety and future, but it also exemplifies a willingness to disrupt lives for the sake of his own visions. It suggests that Merlin values destiny above individual happiness, as he isolates Arthur to preserve his future kingship. Merlin's magic itself isn't always light. While his talents range from healing and guidance to complex spells, he also delves into darker realms of magic. He is reputed to have bound dangerous entities, raised storms, and used spells that caused mental confusion or madness. In certain accounts, Merlin casts binding spells on political enemies and those who would disrupt Arthur's destiny, prioritizing the stability of Camelot over free will. This coercive use of magic points to a broader ethical issue. Merlin sees himself as a custodian of fate, using whatever means necessary to control the trajectory of Arthur's rule, even if it comes at the expense of others' freedom. Merlin's role as Arthur's advisor is more than that of a trusted guide. He becomes a manipulator of fate, subtly weaving his influence into the lives of Arthur and his knights. Rather than purely supporting Arthur's reign, Merlin operates from a vantage point that combines prophecy with calculated action. He orchestrates crucial alliances, setting up marriages and partnerships that reinforce Arthur's rule. But these connections often come with hidden consequences, often leading to more harm than good. Merlin is known as a prophet who can foresee the future, but in some versions of the tales, he takes extreme measures to ensure his prophecies come true, sometimes creating the very conditions for doom. A striking example of this is Merlin's connection to Lancelot. In many tales, Merlin seems aware of Lancelot and Queen Guinevere's growing affection, but rather than intervening to keep their infidelity from erupting, he allows it to simmer. Lancelot's affair with Guinevere introduces a rift in Arthur's inner circle, seeding betrayal and discord that eventually shatters the unity of Camelot. By allowing the affair to unfold, Merlin's guidance indirectly sows the seeds for the kingdom's eventual ruin, as if his loyalty lies more with fulfilling prophecy than preserving Arthur's legacy. This subtle manipulation raises questions about Merlin's true motives. Was he merely serving as an advisor, or was he a puppet master, steering events toward an inevitable end? This ambition is nowhere more evident than in his mentorship of Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's half-sister, and one of the most complex figures in Arthurian legend. Seeing potential in Morgan, Merlin takes her under his wing, teaching her ancient spells and arcane rituals that few others would dare to explore. He introduces her to the arts of shape-shifting, illusion, and manipulation, skills that allow her to alter her appearance and deceive even the sharpest minds. In his eagerness to create a powerful ally, Merlin fails to recognize the dangers of passing such dark knowledge to Morgan, someone with ambitions and desires that could one day oppose his own. As Morgan grows in power, she becomes adept in shape-shifting, mastering it to the point where she can convincingly take on the form of others. Fueled by resentment and a desire for vengeance, Morgan uses her newfound abilities to shapeshift into Guinevere, Arthur's queen, exploiting her likeness to deceive and ultimately seduce Arthur. Arthur, believing he is with his beloved Guinevere, unwittingly falls into Morgan's trap, leading to a union that results in the birth of Mordred, a child born of betrayal and deceit who will later bring about the downfall of Camelot. Merlin's teachings, intended to strengthen his influence and secure Camelot's future, instead sow the seeds of its destruction. By empowering Morgan with dark and dangerous magic, he creates a formidable adversary who uses his own methods against the kingdom he sought to protect. This reckless transfer of knowledge ultimately frames Merlin as a man whose arrogance and willingness to dabble in darkness set into motion the tragic chain of events that would lead to Camelot's fall. In some stories, Mordred, Arthur's son, attempts to seize the throne while Arthur is away, leading to a final confrontation. During the battle, Arthur and Mordred engage in a fierce duel. Arthur mortally wounds Mordred, but Mordred also deals a fatal blow to Arthur. In many versions of the legend, Arthur dies in the Battle of Camelot. This battle occurs right after the betrayal of Arthur by Lancelot and Guinevere, leading to the disintegration of his kingdom. Merlin has a prophetic vision that Mordred would eventually bring about the fall of Arthur's kingdom before he was born. This prophecy drives Merlin's initial attempts to prevent Mordred's birth or to remove him from Camelot. In some stories, Merlin advises Arthur to have all infants born on a certain date cast out to sea to avoid Mordred's survival, a plan that ultimately fails. Mordred survives this attempt, washed ashore and secretly raised elsewhere, while other innocent children born on that same day perish. This cruel act only intensifies the inevitable clash between father and son, sealing Arthur's fate. If Mordred had been raised in Camelot from birth and accepted as part of the royal family, he might not have harbored the same resentment. Because of this, Merlin's attempts to prevent the prophecy may have unintentionally set it into motion. One of the most intriguing facets of Merlin's legacy lies in the so-called Lost Books of Merlin. These mysterious volumes supposedly contained powerful spells, hidden prophecies, and dangerous secrets that were never meant for human hands. The legend of Merlin's lost books hints at the idea that Merlin was not only a master of spells, but also a collector of arcane knowledge, perhaps even a scholar of ancient, pre-Christian magic. The myth holds that Merlin's magical wisdom was too vast to be contained in a single human lifetime, leading him to record his spells and prophecies in a series of books that would outlive him. These lost books were rumored to contain prophecies that extended beyond King Arthur's life and reign, covering the fate of entire kingdoms and dynasties to come. Within these texts, Merlin supposedly recorded secrets about the forces shaping Britain's destiny, with spells so potent they were forbidden to all but the worthiest of successors. These books were said to be so powerful that they were hidden to prevent their misuse, buried in remote locations, or enchanted to be discovered only by the truly worthy. The contents were thought to be dangerous, secrets about the manipulation of fate, life, and death, powers that mere mortals were not meant to wield. This adds a darker edge to Merlin's legacy. Merlin's lost books inspired generations of seekers, from medieval alchemists to Renaissance magicians. They were often believed to contain universal secrets, formulas for alchemical transformations, and spells that could bend reality. Later figures such as Cornelius Agrippa and John Dee were rumored to have sought these lost books, hoping to uncover Merlin's knowledge for their own purposes. My Dark History of Male Witches video covers these men in more detail, link in the description. Some tales suggest that Merlin's knowledge came from the otherworldly realms, and that he recorded these secrets in his books to preserve the magic of the old world. The lost books symbolize not just the potential for greatness, but the temptation to wield dark magic for personal gain or to achieve a misguided sense of justice. As Merlin navigates this treacherous landscape, we are left to ponder: can a being with access to such dark spells truly be trusted? In some legends, Merlin's manipulation leads to his own downfall. He falls in love with Nimue, the Lady of the Lake, and teaches her the secrets of his magic. Nimue, however, grows wary of his power and eventually imprisons him within an enchanted prison, using his own magic against him. This twist suggests poetic justice or karma, as Merlin becomes the victim of his own manipulative behavior. Merlin, who possesses great foresight, cannot escape the fate he has predicted for himself, illustrating the tragic irony of his character. It raises questions about whether one can truly escape fate, even with the ability to foresee it. His vulnerability with Nimue also reveals a darker side where his wisdom is compromised by desire, allowing him to be manipulated and ultimately entrapped. From manipulating the destinies of kings to casting out innocent children in a desperate attempt to thwart prophecy, Merlin's actions raise unsettling questions. Was he truly acting for the greater good, or was he driven by an obsession to control the fate of Camelot, even at the cost of innocent lives? Only one question remains. Does all of this make Merlin dark, or perhaps just more human than meets the eye? As we look back on his choices, his power, and his failures, it's clear that even the greatest of wizards couldn't escape the weight of their own imperfections. The legend may judge him, but in the end, the line between hero and villain is far thinner than it appears on the surface. Thank you for joining me for this story. Until next time, stay mystical. If you enjoyed this dive into Arthurian legend, make sure to leave a like so I know that you like this topic. Also, subscribe to become a mystic seeker. Thanks for watching.